Second video for issue 11. Social perception is a way to understand how our brain pays attention to and remembers information. This is something I started discussing in the last video. So essentially, we are exposed to a whole bunch of stimuli, but our brain can only interpret and categorize a part of that stimuli and store a smaller subsection of what we actually paid attention to. And finally, when we are trying to make a decision or use our judgment, we rely on our memory. It actually pulls out a very little of what we were originally exposed to. So this is the sequence process that we talked about. It's also called social information processing model. And this is again saying that human brains have never been perfect. Even before technology, we only sort of always partially pay attention. So let's not blame technology for being in a state of partial attention at all times. Now let's talk about what does the research say with regards to whether it helps or hurts. Intel did some research on its employees, and they found that employees spend 2 hours a day reading and responding to emails, wasting enormous corporate time, $1 billion worth of corporate time. In other words, people are hired to do many things in Intel. If they're engineers, they're creating semiconductor chips, or doing a whole bunch of things that any organization would do, management, marketing, legal, HR, whatever. But if most of that time is responding to emails, then that might be a huge waste of time. So Microsoft researchers have also determined that it takes employees about 25 minutes to revert to their work-related tasks after they're interrupted by external method of communication. So if they are reading emails, if they are on instant messenger, Facebook, Twitter, BlackBerry, any of these things, the second they do any of that stuff, it takes them about 25 minutes to actually get back to being able to work productively. Harvard found that average employees spend 40% of their time handling information received on things like laptops, cell phones, etc., and only 60% of time on actually value creation activities related to work. So we're wasting potentially half our workday on these things, and is this a good use of our time or not? So your chapter about this issue brings up another question, which is the who question. And the who question is, well, if you're going to do a results-only work environment or a technology-based company, or what we call the virtual workplace, kind of like what we're doing right now, virtual classroom, who are the best candidates for such a virtual environment? It is people who are self-starters, again, high on conscientiousness, so they do not have to be micromanaged, heavily monitored, they're comfortable running projects, they're responsible for completing deliverables of their project, they love what they're doing, so they want to stay in it, they have a passion for what they're doing. But again, study these traits. This is not only something that we'd want in a virtual environment, right? We'd want self-starters, people who don't need to be micromanaged to work well, who are leaders and who love what they do. We want those traits in all employees anyway. So if somebody's saying, hey, technology only works for these kinds of people, or technology work environments only work for these kind of people, the truth is we want these kind of people with these traits, even in non-tech environments. So is it really technology that we should blame, or should we question human character when we say, is it harmful or helpful? Okay. So at this point in class, I would have kind of asked you, what do you guys think? Does it help or hurt? And it tends to be kind of not a huge debate point, in the sense that, yes, it definitely hurts some productivity, but think about how much production in the world and productivity in the world, period, has increased because of technology. Because we have technology in the internet and laptops, PAs, cell phones, all of that stuff, we are able to get so much more work done than we ever could in decades past. So overall, our productivity as a human race has increased. And in that, maybe even if 40% of the time is quote unquote wasted, overall the pie has increased, or the productivity has increased. So even if technology has increased productivity, there are ways to curb some of the negative effects of technology. So if technology is causing people to be distracted, there could be ways of organizations implementing policies to help reduce those distractions. So for example, IBM had implemented some policies where on Fridays, nobody was required to check their email, or there would be no meetings on that particular day. So that itself freed people up from this feeling that they had to reply to a colleague right away, and they were able to actually focus on their work and just shut off email. So some organizations tend to do that even during the workday. So they'll say, from 3 to 4 p.m., nobody's going to check emails, for example. And so nobody expects replies. And that's one of the ways to essentially curb any of the negative effects of how technology might be hurting productivity. And a question I would have asked is for organizations to be able to ensure that people aren't wasting their time on using technology. A lot of organizations ban you from using your personal computers, your phones, being on Facebook or social media. And I would have asked you, do you think would you want to work in an environment that is where the internet is being monitored, where your activities are being monitored? Why or why not? And we've had different responses to that. But I'd say for the most part, we're entering an age where people just take their technology for granted. And so while organizations definitely do need to have clear policies about what their technology is, these policies need to be realistic, such that people don't feel micromanaged. And then the essence or the effort naturally falls on the individual to be highly conscientious and get their work done, because whether we like it or not, even if we want to be not reliant on technology, pandemics like the one we are in right now force us to be reliant entirely on technology. So we have to really create a culture of being highly conscientious as good managers. That's it. Email me if you have any questions, and hopefully that sets you up well for the quiz related to this topic. Thanks, guys.